this episode, I talk serial killers and SpectreVision with my friend and fellow podcaster, Jessie Bones. She runs the Chase Darkness With Me podcast, so definitely want to check that out. After you're done with this episode, make sure you check out my fellow horsemen of the podcast apocalypse, Everything Went Black podcast, Into the Necrosphere, the Necromaniacs podcast, Iblis Manifestations, the Show Stomper podcast, and the Soul Knox podcast. Thanks so much and hope you enjoy this one. All right, Jessie, thanks for being on the podcast and talking some SpectreVision with me today.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Very excited to do it.
Yeah, we're both huge fans. And I mean, that's how we met each other online, was through, I think it was a SpectreVision post on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, yeah. Yeah. And then I think our friendship just kind of blossomed from there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to start one off. I mean, SpectreVision, you know.
Just horror films in general, but like when you can connect a production company to your horror love and then your friendship, I think, that works. That's a pretty good way to start something.
I use it as a gauge for most people, if you're cool or not, I guess. If you dig Mandy, if you dig pretty much any film off the SpectreVision catalog, they're all fucking great. But, especially Mandy, that's my favorite film. So, if you don't really dig Mandy or you shit on it or something, I got to think twice about you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Anybody who trashes Mandy or says something about Nick Cage, we're just going to politely back away.
Yeah, that's true. Nick Cage is another scale I use to judge you as a person. Man, I love Nick Cage. I've thought he was cool since the 90s, and I like the new Renaissance of Nick Cage and all these pretty killer films he's in now.
Absolutely. Is there a Nick Cage film that you remember growing up watching or anything?
Let's see. Snake Eyes was a big one for me. Snake Eyes, Face Off. Those are two big ones for me. And also Con Air. You can't forget Con Air.
Oh,
but
course.
that was my teen years. But earlier in that, it was mostly Snake Eyes. What was it? Leaving Las Vegas. Am I correct? Was it Leaving Las Vegas that he was in? I think so.
Yeah, the one that it's always fun to see, meet another person that either has this in their repertoire or still watches it. We actually watch it every year still. The Family Man.
Oh, The Family Man's great. I haven't revisited that one since it came out. That'd be a good one to check out again.
It's one of my mom's top 5 favorite movies, and we watch it usually we'll have this little mini, because we have a huge family. So we have this little mini party in between Thanksgiving and Christmas when it's just us kids and mom. And we watch that together still.
Oh, cool. That's a killer tradition. I like that when you can bring the family together with a cool film,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's just homey. It's I know what happens. I've seen it 30 million times, but it's just, you got to have films like that. You probably feel the same way about Mandy.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, I watch Mandy at least once or twice a year. It never gets old either. I'm always seeing something new that I missed, to watch before that and stuff. Always figuring new things out about it and new theories.
What's a theory you've had most recently?
The most recent theory I had on Mandy, I guess, is from when I was watching the rewatch with Joe Bob Briggs on The Last Drive-In. He covered Mandy. I think it was this year. It may have been last season's. I think it was this season's, but I don't know. Just seeing it more in a even more psychedelic state, more outlandish and stuff than what I've seen it before. Because what I usually associate Mandy with is this fucking the loss and the loss of the loved one and stuff like that. Then this the brutal revenge and never letting that love die. That's a big thing. But seeing it now with Joe Bob's kind of his commentary and stuff, I see it more as this is psychedelic fucking mind trip.
Oh, for sure. One of the things that tripped me out, and I don't know, I can't remember if I showed it to you, but I read a little backstory on Jeremiah Sand. And it had to do with the Reading fires in 2018.
Oh, okay. I think you may have shared this with me. I'm not 100%
And I
sure on
was
that.
dying laughing because I was just like, okay, so I'm from Reading, and yeah, I worked those fires, so
Wow.
it was really funny reading that. I was just like, okay, I feel this is a little bit too like when people say like it feels like I was really there. Well, it felt like I was really there. It was just a
Right.
little bit, yeah. I was like, okay, that's surreal. I'm gonna bail from reading this for a minute.
Yeah, those fires were crazy. I'm glad it's died down for now. Am I right?
There's
I don't
another
think
one
I've
that
seen one.
just sprung up. And when I say just sprung up, I don't like it's in some mountain ranges. Like when you're driving, so I live in like this little dinky town, like outside of Reading, just outside.
Mhm.
So when I drive into Reading, you can see like all of this smoke plume like from the mountain ranges. So I don't know how close it is. I haven't had a chance to kind of check it out because it's not close enough to where, anybody that I know personally yet is under direct threat. But it did not look good yesterday
Hmm.
when I drove into town.
It's crazy. You got fires on your side. On my side of the states, I have fucking monsoon weather, man. We got 35 inches of
Yeah,
rain last week.
good lord. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was this one I remember I was in high school and we were having this argument at one point in class because we had a kid that was from Oklahoma talking about like you guys have earthquakes. This is crazy. And I was like, "You want to know the last time I remember an earthquake?" Never. I was like maybe a picture frame moved when I was little. That's the last time I really remember experiencing an earthquake. But over there, homie, the wind just picks up your house and just takes it wherever it feels like taking it. So no offense, but I'm okay with earthquakes.
Yeah. We get tornadoes and stuff. Not as a frequent as like some of the Midwest states, but we still get tornadoes, and man, those freak me out. I don't, but I mean, they freak everybody out. There's no warning. It's scary as fuck.
Yeah, for sure. Ooh, yeah, I would
Yeah.
not see. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'll take the earthquake. I don't think I want like any natural disaster really. Let's just avoid those. But like, if I have to pick, I think I'm good with the
Yeah.
earthquake.
Yeah. I'm taking no natural disasters for the win there. Like, don't want no
Oh,
part of
for
those.
sure. Yeah, just like no fires, no none of that for now would be awesome. Not that we get to enjoy any of that, but
Right.
um, there was something I was going to ask you about Mandy, and I forgot what it was. So we're gonna place a flag here and then circle around to what was the first film that you saw? Was it Mandy that introduced you to SpectreVision just as a company?
The first film that got me into Spectervision was A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. That was a bit of a
Great
tongue
one.
twister. Yeah, and I've watched that. I think that was on Shudder when it premiered and stuff. I don't know if it was a Shudder original or however they do that, but yeah, I love that fucking film, man. It's so good, so like artsy and so much
Oh,
style
for
to it,
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, before that too, there was a weird ass film I didn't know was by Spectrevision at the time, but it was on I think it was on Netflix at all places. It was called Toad Road.
Yes. I
Yeah,
also had no idea that that was them.
dude, that is a trippy ass fucking movie, literally.
The one that so when I found out that it was them like way later, of course I was like thrilled with that. But ironically, The Boy was the first one that I ever saw. And I actually read it because I was reading reviews that were not very nice. I always love like reading negative reviews about something and then watching it for myself because people I think can sometimes just be ridiculous about
Totally,
the things
totally,
they
yeah.
say. So well, it was weird because they used slow burn as a criticism, and I was just like, I mean, I agree it's a slow burn, but it's not something that I would characterize as anything negative because basically what they did in like a very cinematic artful way is just kind of describe to you what it's like to become a psychopath or have those genetic predispositions to become a psychopath, nobody recognizing them and just kind of slowly letting you grow up into these traits. So I thought that was like whether they intentionally did that or not, I thought that was a really great just the feeling of growing up like that.
Yeah, totally. And I always skipped over that film because I thought I've told you this before. I thought The Boy was the other The Boy movie
Hmm.
with the
Hmm.
kind of puppet type thing going on. I won't give away any
Yeah.
spoilers for that one, but two totally different films. This one's way better. I really love the SpectreVision version of The Boy. Well, their film The Boy is not a version of the other film, but and this one is based off a book, correct?
It's based off of, so it was a screenplay by, oh my God, the fact that I just forgot his name is just, give me a second. Clay. I don't know why there's an L in the like middle part of his name, and for some reason I think that has something to do with his first name every single time. But Clay McLeod Chapman.
Yep, yep.
Um, yeah, and he was. I love everything that I've read of his so far. Really nice guy. We actually talked to him at one point on Hollywood is Dead too. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, so it was his screenplay, and then I think that they had wanted it to become a trilogy basically. So you're seeing like a child, an adolescent, and then an adult, basically psychopath. So it's kind of like his progression of psychopathy into a full-on adult. And I don't know if they were going to go like the serial killer angle or anything like that. But and it's kind of funny because like even in the film that's already been made, they explore that whole they call it the homicidal trifecta. So when you have a child who there's like three things that they say that are like warning signs of psychopathy, which is enuresis, which is bedwetting,
Hmm.
cruelty to animals, and then fire starting. So they definitely explored cruelty to animals and fire starting. And I think the sad thing is that, and this is something that they explored so you can see it on the film, but it's just something that would happen in any kid that would express traits like this. So
Hmm.
you see him being basically neglected by his father. We as an audience can clearly see that there's problems. Dad is more, and I'm not like parents, unless like you're just a cruel person, you don't set out to just destroy your child, right? But he's clearly more wrapped up in kind of like his own suffering, so he doesn't have enough time or the bandwidth necessarily to see his sons. So it's just like a really unfortunate stew that this child is born into with, possibly like like I said, genetics, psychological predisposition to psychopathy. So just kind of the perfect storm for him to just keep growing up like that if nobody catches it and intervenes.
Right. I think if they would have continued on with it, it would have made a really like killer trilogy, like show progression from, childhood years, maybe teen years, all the way up to an adult, and like what he's doing then, like if he is a serial killer or whatever, I think that would have been really cool.
Yeah, I'm still holding out that that's something that they may want to try still because it's such a gorgeous, tragic film. And I just think it set them up, in my humble opinion, set them up perfectly for like the next two movies that they wanted to do. And it would just be, and honestly, like even just consults with, have you ever heard of a guy named Dr. James Fallon?
I've heard the name before, but I don't know anything about him.
So he is a fully diagnosed psychopath, right?
Hmm.
But he's never hurt anybody. He's certainly not a serial killer. He's actually a neuroscientist and psychiatrist himself.
Wow.
He didn't find out that he was a psychopath until way later in life. And he was doing like brain scans on serial killers and he was doing, or psychopaths, and he was doing brain scans on Alzheimer's patients. And he was using his family as like a control group. So his
Hmm.
family's brain scans. One of his family's brain scans had the same exact pattern, like light patterns from the PET scans, which is positron emission tomography
Hmm.
of the murderers, the psychopaths. And so originally he was just like, okay, somebody like in the lab or whatever is like just playing a joke on me. And they were kind of like, no, nobody's messing with you. So he freaks out. And the thing that, like, I read his book 1,000 times because I love it so much. But the thing he said was, this person should not be in like free society right now. So he breaks the binding off of the scan to see the name, and it's his.
Whoa, that's crazy.
It's amazing. It's just like such a weird, cool story. But pretty much everything that I've learned about psychopaths, obviously I went to school for it for a little bit, but then I learned from him just because, who better to learn from in some ways than an actual psychopath and what they experience on a daily basis, especially with his opinion being like that parental intervention into a child's life, just providing them with like maybe extra love, noticing those problems, whereas with a kid who doesn't exhibit those things, not necessarily that you wouldn't love them, but just like, his mom being very, very attentive and hovering over him and making sure that he had all the love, attention that he needed, outside activities, because if he wasn't preoccupied, he was going to do other things like start fires and make bombs.
Right.
So, yeah, so it was just kind of her. So I just became obsessed with the idea that, like, a parent's love is something that has just a profound effect that we all know it has, but even more so than I think people are aware of. Like, maybe you can stop somebody from becoming a monster just by, being there as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I also have a theory too, it's just a theory of mine or whatever, but maybe some people are just like born bad, you think, or and you can do what you can as a parent to kind of guide them in the right direction, but it's almost like a primal like instinct that's in them that's, born with it. I've heard that before from like different like murder cases and stuff, like on true crime reading material and stuff like that. Like some people are just born bad. I don't, what's your take on that?
What's interesting is that a lot of so one of the FBI profilers, his name's Jim Clemente. I really like him. One of his things that he routinely says on his podcast called Real Crime Profile is he talks about it being a three-legged stool, or he describes it as a gun. I'm actually not sure if he would use that analogy currently, but it's a combination of genetics, your personal psychology, like the way that your brain chemistry works, and then your life experiences. So your genetics, like I said, he described it as a gun. I'm just going to use that analogy for now. So your genetics load the gun, your personal psychology and brain chemistry points it in a specific direction, and then your environmental triggers and your life experiences are going to be the thing that pulls the trigger.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And then interestingly enough, a lot of, I think you're more, for instance, like Dennis Rader, who is, I hate using their stupid little acronyms or their paper names, but a lot of people don't know him as Dennis Rader. They mainly know him as BTK. So he was one of the ones that had a pretty severe head injury when he was younger. Like his mom actually accidentally dropped him. But there's actually a few of them that have very traumatic head injuries at a really young age to like the temporal lobe, which has a lot to do with like impulse control. So that's an interesting part too. I don't think that necessarily means that just because you've had a head injury, you just get to kill people or, you get an excuse in that realm. But it is worth, I think, paying attention to, just in the sense that, what did that do to your ability to, especially at such a young age, develop healthy empathy for living things. Because it's not just, I don't know. I think, and here's another one that's weird for me. Have you ever heard of another killer called Israel Keys?
Israel Keys, I do believe so. I've been through a bunch of serial killers when it comes to like research and podcasts, but that name does ring a bell.
So he was pretty horrific. I'm not going to get into details because he's incredibly gruesome. Like some of his, like, actually, I remember feeling a little bit sick having to read about. But he was weird in the sense that he would not hurt dogs. Which is, like I said about the homicidal trifecta when it comes to like warning signs for psychopathy in a young kid. So weirdly enough, like he's a psychopath, he's a serial killer, a very successful serial killer. But he's not somebody who has struggled with cruelty to animals for whatever reason. So I think it's odd sometimes how there are certain murderers who have expressed their desire to, he said that he would never break into a house with a dog. So that was
Hmm.
like an immediate deterrent for him, is if like he's stalking somebody and they have a dog in the home, he is not going to risk needing to hurt the dog to get to that person. So I found it interesting how it's like he has empathy for life in the sense that he cares about not wanting to hurt a dog, but a human being, no qualms there. We're
Different
fine.
story.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
It is, but I can see that sort of because, if I'm watching a horror movie or any movie in general, if there's any kind of like animal cruelty, like anything, especially with cats, dogs, or anything, that shit is fucking, I can't stand that shit. I'll watch it, but I'm not going to watch it again. That's like watching Gummo. Gummo fucking destroyed me with all like the cat stuff that went on in that movie. But when it
Yeah.
comes to like, humans dying and being fucking chopped up or shot or whatever, like, okay, that's pretty cool. It's weird.
You know what? I just had somewhat of an epiphany about that. And I'm not saying I agree with the type of person who would think this, obviously. But in
Mm,
some ways, I think so. Animals are just like, they're just animals, right? They're completely helpless. They're
mm.
like, especially like domesticated animals, they're completely dependent on us for like food, attention, love, all that. So in some ways, I wonder if like it's easier to have empathy for an animal versus like another person that you can relate with, that you're wondering maybe has all like the same weird proclivities and potential for evil that you do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I look at animals as just like pure innocence because they're just animals. They're not out to like try to fuck you over or like do anything cruel on purpose. They're just animals. Like it's just the embodiment of pure innocence.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm wondering if it has to have something to do with it. So yeah, it's interesting too, because I don't like the idea. I know that a lot of people just say, well, so and so, that person was just evil. And the reason I don't feel like I like that very much, like ignoring the philosophical aspect of like, does evil exist or not, is because like the thing that makes I think like somebody like Ted Bundy, BTK, just so terrifying is the fact that they were human at one point.
Yeah.
They started out the same way that we did, who don't do those types of things. So it's just like I think that makes it more scary. It's not that they're evil, it's that they're just as human as you and I are. So what happened? Just
Right.
think
It's
that's a
like
lot worse.
it's almost like there's a balance we're either born with or we have, between good and bad, if you want to say good and bad or whatever. But there's that balance there. Then there's something that, either tips it either way as we grow older or just, something switches in our brain. It's like, okay, well, I'm going this way now. We all have the potential there for, good or bad.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's I feel like I don't know. I don't know how often you think bad things during the day, but I think we all have like some thoughts that we're just like, why did I think that? So it's just like,
Right.
as long as nobody's perfect, we all think like horrible like things, or just have the potential to do something. Maybe if it's not horrible, but just we all have the potential to do the wrong thing. So as long as you're just constantly like raging against that baser instinct to just do and look out for yourself only, I think that's all you can do in terms of being a good person, is you're just like, okay, so I'm recognizing this is the incorrect thing to do in this moment. It doesn't matter if it's the one that's going to be the easy way out for me. I'm not taking it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Like, this is what I need to be doing. I don't need to be doing. This is bad. Don't do that. Like this is the right way here. But yeah,
I
totally.
have and it's weird. I don't know, like, I can't even remember necessarily like when this phrase like became this important to me, but I wear a ring, just like a black band on my finger
Hmm.
with Hebrew on it. And it says, if not you, then who? And it's just, to me, it's always just kind of been this thing where, I don't want to do something because I'm lazy and exhausted, but if what's the cost of me not being the one to do it? And like the
Hmm.
most basic example I can offer, this is like just bottom of the barrel, not like I think what I think about when I think of this quote, but it did come up one time when, I've worked in hospitals and stuff, and they were asking at one point, like, which person wants to work overtime on this specific day. I can't even begin to tell you how much I didn't want to. I
Right.
was exhausted. Like I'd already worked like a 40-hour work week, actually plus I think at that point. But I could see how tired the girls were, and I was just like, you know what? We're all exhausted. So that phrase just like immediately kind of came up in my head. If not you, then who? And I was like, fine, I'll do it. But you know what I mean? Where it's just like
Yeah.
a reminder to be like, okay, everybody has the capacity for selfishness. Totally understandable. That's not necessarily something wrong. It's just there. It just depends on what you do with it. So
Right.
just, yeah, like I said, rage against those baser instincts.
Yeah, totally agree on that. So
um,
what was your I don't know if I get off topic a little bit, but did you tell me what your first encounter with Spectervision was film wise?
the Boy, which was what spurred that
Okay, that's what
entire,
we're talking. Okay, just want to make sure. Yeah. Well, I'm all over
yeah.
the place on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that being the first one because that's the one that just spurred me into. So now everything that I write, and granted, I'm a lot more of like a collaborative writer at this point. I mainly read scripts and then just kind of, if they ask specifically for input, I'll give input just in the form of notes on scripts. At this point, I just read anything I can get my hands on, anything anybody's willing to let me read,
Hmm.
and then just try to link people up with like minds for what we might be able to do with some of this like really awesome stuff I've been reading, to be honest. But when I personally write, it all has to do with like, again, the whole like psychopathy theme, and it's directly because of that film.
Right.
So yeah,
That's
that's the
awesome
funny
how
thing.
you're inspired by, that film and inspired by SpectreVision as a whole there. I think that's really killer.
I think that's just like what one of the things that they're really good at, and it's just with, I mean, it's with everything. It's with the Visitations podcast, it's with the films, it's with the specific people that they choose to make films with. It's just awesome to watch people taking massive, I mean, I say massive in the sense that I think we all know where Hollywood is right now in terms of like the kinds of things that they want to be able to like force feed to the public.
Hmm.
And it's nothing, in my opinion, that's like artistic, or it's just like a bunch of spin-offs of shows that have already been made, and I'm bored and I'm over it.
Oh,
so
totally. Yeah.
so it's awesome to see a company like SpectreVision taking risks to keep art alive. I'm not saying that they're the only company that does it, but what I am saying is they're the one that resonates the strongest with me in terms of what I look for when I look for art, or like types of people that you'd ever want to go into the industry modeling yourself after.
Totally. And yeah, anything's got SpectreVision on it, it's gonna be something really killer. It's gonna be something unique. They're just a breath of fresh air when it comes to film and stuff.
Absolutely. It's like anytime you see that logo, you're like, okay, so I know for a fact there will be heart in here somewhere. So that's awesome. So you can kind of like rest easy. Specifically, I think a really good example of that most recently was No Man of God. Um,
I still haven't seen that one. That's pretty bad of
oh
me. I have not
gosh,
seen that
okay.
yet.
We won't talk about it too much, because actually there's not too many spoilers in it, in the sense that if you know the Ted Bundy case, you know basically everything that's kind of going to happen. What you
Yeah.
don't know is like just the way that these relationships unfold specifically. So I'll keep my mouth shut about that. But yeah, director Amber Seeley did a phenomenal job. Like everyone that worked on this film did just a holy shit amazing job. It was like the first movie about Ted Bundy I've ever seen that didn't make me feel sick, because they're
Hmm.
so just like salacious and exploitative, and just almost like, even if they try to steer clear of it, sometimes they just fall too much into like this, like, ooh, wasn't he creepy? Or just like this weird level of admiration that doesn't make any sense if you know what
Yeah,
he's done.
like romanticizing Ted Bundy. I see that a lot in these like films and all. But I'm like, oh, wasn't he a handsome debonair man and all this shit? I'm like, oh fuck, dude.
And that's the funny thing too, is that he wasn't even handsome. He was just incredibly generic. So he looks
Right.
so disgustingly normal that, he was able to disguise himself so well and get into positions of power. I mean, he was pretty prominent in like the Republican Party for a little bit. So, I mean, that was his claim to fame. He was like a slice of apple pie, very generic, very American, very would not be suspecting him to be capable of all the things that he did, but definitely not like number one because of his actions, but definitely not worth like the level of like weird, creepy worship I've seen people do for him. Yeah, it's odd. Like you just see, there's a specific website I remember seeing, and it's all about basically serial killers. So they have like pink shirts with like hearts with like a cartoon like sketch of like Ted Bundy's face in it. Mm-hmm. And the thing is like a lot of these serial killers like had their heyday in the 70s. So I'm like, their victims' family members are still going to be possibly alive. Like, how do you feel about like walking around wearing that, possibly knowing that somebody that loved that person, that whose name you don't know, by the way, of course you know his, you don't know hers. How do you feel about, you know, somebody seeing you wearing that? Like, that's the person that killed their kid, you know what I mean, or their sister or their brother. Let's just,
Yeah, I see the same type worship too for Richard Ramirez, which man, like I see, oh, he was so hot. Richard Ramirez was like the best. I'm like, Richard Ramirez, do you know what he did?
Richard Ramirez looked like a demon, like from the beginning.
Hell yeah, it looks like a fucking demon, man. If I was to draw up a demon in real life, it'd be Richard Ramirez. I mean, that guy was fucked up, you know.
Oh God, there's just so many, and I think the thing is, I don't know what it is necessarily for people who feel that way about serial killers, right? Because we all have a little bit of especially within the horror community, we all have a bent towards the macabre. But I think it's more so, again, much like SpectreVision will showcase a lot of the time, it has much more to do with feelings of impermanence, very strong feelings of grief, and coping with those things. It's not anything to do with like, you know, we're all a bunch of fucked up people with no empathy. So to watch people basically parade serial killer faces around, to me, as a person who is a fan of the gore films, that offends me.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting like what people are and aren't okay with.
Yeah, it always blows my mind.
So yeah, you need to watch No Man of God, and you need to watch it soon because it was kind of amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put it on my list. It just totally flew by, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch this whenever it did come out and stuff. I never got around to it, so I'm gonna put that on my list for sure. And you said it takes a bit of a different perspective and stuff than the other
so
Ted Bundy
much
films.
Different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's actually it doesn't really. If anything, it just kind of like makes him this sniveling little monster that he actually was in the end. And it's interesting too. It's him, and then who else? H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes. How much do you know about him?
Oh yeah, I know a good bit about him and his House of Death.
Right. Okay. So isn't it funny how when he died, he like in his requests for like burial and whatever, he wanted his grave to be cemented over so that nobody could dismember him or do anything to his corpse.
That's crazy. I didn't know that part.
I'm just like, you little piece of shit. Like, because he was doing all kinds of things to everybody else, but like, it's like, oh no, not me. He was just
you
like,
leave me alone.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because like have you read Devil in the White City?
I have not, no.
So read that one, because I feel like people, when they read that book, they think it has more to do with H.H. Holmes in a different way, where I think a lot of it just kind of has to do with like the architecture of like the city in the time frame around when he was a thing. But it definitely talks about him in that, and it's a really good book. I don't know. There's like so many books that I'm just like, there should be film adaptations of these. Devil in the White City is definitely one. And if there is a film adaptation of that, I don't feel like I've seen it. I don't think there was one. I might just be crazy, but yeah, that one. And then the same author is the person that did In the Garden of Beasts, which is about Nazi Germany.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one either, so I definitely want to check out the H.H. Holmes one. I mean, I've read a bunch about him, but there's still a lot of shit I don't know about him.
Yeah, I think who's the author's name of both of those? Eric Larson, I believe. Um, but yeah, it's just I hope so much, and I know it's maybe just a pipe dream at this point because I know sometimes when projects get killed, they get killed pretty hard. But I really just would love to see, specifically because of their SpectreVision's ability to like hone in so much on the ability to be empathetic about telling something. Like even in Mandy, how
Hmm.
gory is that film and just traumatizing, but it just there's so much love in it still, and that's like one of the things that I'm just like, and obviously that has a lot to do with like the people that they choose to make films with. So it's just I just
Right.
hope so much that they can do more with The Boy because I would be down forever for more of that. um yeah, I just
Yeah.
everything that they've done so far in terms of just being able to, like I said, showcase that much empathy within dark themes is just astonishing in a really positive, amazing way.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, they do it the right. They do it justice. Like going back to Mandy again, like you're saying, like the extreme violence. I mean, there's a fucking chainsaw fight in there, and it's brutal as fuck. But it's like, all that brutality is for a reason. It's not just random brutalness to be brutal. It's all for a reason. Fucking Red's getting his revenge, and he's letting it all out. This is all the anger and all the shit he's mad about, from the loss of Mandy and stuff like that. It's like, I'm letting all this shit out, and this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing too. Sometimes I wonder how I don't know how ready they were for like just like this slew of little metalhead fans to latch onto them as hard as we did. Because you and I both grew up in, like the metalhead
Oh yeah.
scene. So yeah, I mean there's like obviously those themes along with it where it's just like that heavy bass, like the music, like the entire score to Mandy is just like holy shit.
It's
um
so good, and will blow your speakers out in your car. So.
oh, absolutely. I actually, so there's one the on my passenger side that I absolutely blew out, and I can guarantee you it's from that soundtrack. 'Cause,
The fucking
uh
low end, so low.
yeah, and that's just a funny thing too, is just like I think the horror community and the metalhead community sometimes just kind of like they have like the times that they cross, and Mandy was very much a big deal for both of those communities, I feel like. But it's kind of the same thing, like when you grow up, listening to like my intro to like really like heavier music later in life, even though I listened to everything, was death metal.
Hmm.
And I was like a sad teenager at one point because my parents had just been divorced. We moved around all the time. I think sometimes like whether, and we weren't even like an army family or anything. That's the sad thing. It was just my parents basically trying to change the scenery enough to maybe jumpstart their relationship back to being good again. I feel like
Hmm.
sometimes if we think that the scenery changes, we'll change, when in actuality that has to come from the inside out. So it's not your environment, it's you. And wherever you transport yourself, you're going to infect that environment again. So that's one of the
Right.
reasons why we moved 24/7 when I was young. So I definitely, when they were talking about on visitations, how like a lot of like horror writers, horror fans, anybody that loves horror has a like deep senses of impermanence. And I absolutely have that. So the metalhead community, I feel like a lot, it was just, especially the teenagers, us trying to cope with those like very heavy feelings in a healthy way. Music is
Hmm.
always the best way to do that. So yeah,
Most
but
definitely.
then you just get kind of like pigeonholed basically into this, oh, they're wearing black and they have long hair and they're tattooed and they're evil. And most of us just want to go home and snuggle with our kitties after we've headbanged for a little bit at a really brutal show.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much us. Yes. I'm evil on the outside, though. You run into me in the streets, and what are you talking about? You know, I'm gonna be fucking evil as evil can be. But you get me home, you got my cats. Yeah, yeah, it's a different person.
Yeah, I don't. It was funny. I was a preceptor when I worked at the clinic I was at, and even then, like I was wearing scrubs, but they told me I could wear whatever color I wanted, so I always wore black. And fortunately, the place I worked at, I was allowed to have my tattoos exposed, so I was just like, I'm just being me on a daily basis. But it was so cute. Like one of my interns was like, like when I first met you, I was really scared of you, but now she was like, you're basically my work mom. I just thought it was so funny because I'm like, that's such a just like, aesthetically you present a certain way, but then on the inside you're just like, I just want to like get along with people and be loved like everybody else. So I think that's funny. I feel like that's every person probably more than likely in the horror community, where it's just like, yeah, like blood, guts, really intense things, but also we just want love and hope like everybody else.
Yeah, like metal and horror just are ways we can express all that, and get all that out, and be back to our normal selves when we're behind closed doors. Like, okay, cool, we got that out, we're good. So
for sure, I think one of my there's like who is it? Oh my gosh, Brandon, help me. Is it goat horror? There's one of the like more like bands that has like a lot more satanic imagery, but they're like all vegans.
good. They're all vegans, you said?
Yeah. So it's just like not only do they not do the things that people would think they do, but they're like, oh no, we can't even eat animals.
Not sure. I know it ain't goat horror. I'm pretty sure. I'm about 100% sure on that one. I'm pretty sure goat horror.
I know I can't.
But I don't know. There are a few bands out there that are like vegan. Like there's some vegan black metal bands, I think. Vegan hardcore bands.
Mm-hmm. There's actually a satanic band I know of that all of the members happen to be Catholic, which is hilarious. So it's very funny because a lot of, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think music comes from a very real place, but like especially for just like the brutality that metal likes to showcase, like a lot of it is just for like theatrics as well.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, take Slayer for instance. There, I mean, shit. I think couple of members of Slayer were Catholic. I know Tom was supposedly a Catholic, and Kerry King is something else. He might be non-denominational, but yeah, you would think there'd be like, there's satanic metal, and but no, I think they're all somewhat religious for the most part.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. It's just kind of a interesting thing about aesthetics. It's just like you kind of can't help but like what you like in terms of. I mean, I used to get told that the way I dressed was like a phase all the time, but I mean, I'm 31 now. I'm still rocking black and I'm very tattooed, and it's just, I don't know. I feel at home in my skin. And then I guess it's always very funny just to watch somebody, not even just with me, like with any of my friends that look like this. Like, I think it would be very funny with you too, because you're one of the nicest people I've ever met. So if somebody like actually sees you and is just like, no, he's a monster, and it's like, no, he's a really chill, just super sweet guy.
Yeah, I've been called you like an axe murderer. I'm like, I really ain't. I mean, I wouldn't use an axe. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's like I said, it's fun to find kind of a home for yourself in like, art communities like that. So within music, specifically metal or punk, and then in the horror community, it's just like there's so much more love in those communities than you would ever guess at as somebody that doesn't feel maybe I don't know, didn't grow up the way that we did, where we had to like seek out things to comfort our brains, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Myself growing up too, I've been a loner since I was a kid. I'm not a big people person, I guess you would say, but finding metal and horror, that was a big thing. I found horror first because I got into metal at probably like 13 or 12, but like some of the bands I was listening to when I was a little kid was like fucking Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains, and they gradually got heavier after that, And and then horror has been a part of my life since I was like 4 or 5 years old. Like my grandma, my aunt, and all got me into that. Like some of the first films I ever watched was Hellraiser.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask you
Traumatized.
what your indoctrination was.
Oh, definitely. It's going to be Hellraiser, and also Freddy's Nightmare, the TV show that used to come on back in, what was
Oh,
it,
okay.
late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, I remember that one big time because there's this one scene in there where this kid's at going through the line in school for the cafeteria line and shit, and these pepperonis fly off and stick to his cheeks. And they start melting into his skin, and I think he slowly starts to turn into Freddy or something like Freddy, and that shit traumatized me as a
Oh
kid, man.
shit.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. Um, I had my indoctrination is hard for me to pinpoint because on one hand, like, so I think there's two that I can definitely say. One,
Hmm.
because I grew up very religious. We didn't get the chains taken off us or like any slack on the chains just a little bit until my parents got divorced, which is,
Hmm.
that's typically around the time where some parents just kind of give up and they're like, eh. But we would go to, I remember this very vividly. It was like I was a freshman in high school. We would go to Blockbuster. Mom wasn't really paying attention at like what we were putting into the cart. So we would just kind of like put horror movies like underneath something else, right?
Hmm.
And so we'd end up getting home with them. One of the things we did was we had a portable DVD player. So we would sneak out to I think we had like, it was not an expedition. I can't remember. It was a very big car because there was a lot of kids, right? So we would like flatten all the seats in the back and we'd bring our blankets in there and we would watch horror movies on the portable DVD player in the car. So she couldn't hear what was happening. And so one time, like, she comes out and she can see us all in there and she's like, what is happening? So she like flings the door open and we were like, oh shit, this is the moment. This is the moment that we're fucked and we can't watch movies anymore. But she was literally, she was pretty cool about it. She was just like, okay, whatever. You're in high school. Um, but the movie that we got caught watching was Pet Cemetery.
Oh, nice. That's a great
Yeah,
one.
which was great. Love that movie to death. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen it. And then actually the other movie. So I was like terrified of getting kidnapped when I was a child for some reason. I have no idea why.
Hmm.
Um, no, I'm sorry, I do. Um, it was because of the Adam Walsh documentary.
Oh, yeah,
John
I've seen
Walsh's
that.
kid.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
when the
So
yeah, it's horrible.
yeah. So weirdly, they did it. I think it was like a Dateline thing. I cannot remember like what publication or like what show it was, but they played the documentary and then they kind of went into more specifics of the case that they had at the time. That was like the first time I ever knew what that like an adult would ever do something like that to a kid, and I was just like taken aback. I was like, okay, I traumatized me, scared the crap out of me. And so like for a long time I wouldn't let, if my grandma went into the store or something and left me in the car, even if it was going to be for 5 minutes, I'd freak out. Because I was terrified of being kidnapped. I think like when you hear something like that as a kid and you don't feel comfortable enough to come to your parents so that they can explain those situations to you, you just assume it's going to happen to you or something, or you just get afraid that that's probably something that could happen to you.
Right.
So that fear, I feel like whenever I get really afraid of something, I kind of want to learn a lot more about it because that makes that fear less. I've been that way my whole life. So weirdly enough, I started like learning about like kidnapping and forensics and those kinds of things. And then I saw The Vanishing, the Dutch film, not the remake.
Okay. Right.
um, but yeah, that also was another one that scared me pretty good. Just that idea of like just being missing forever. And in that point, it wasn't necessarily about me going missing. I feel like at that point, it was about I was old enough to like have like very strong attachments to people. And I recognized a lot of myself like in the main character in terms of that obsession. So I was just like, okay, I was like, I wonder if forensics and just, searching for people essentially or being somehow involved in that process is a thing for me. So that's when I went into medicine and then I started doing autopsy. But yeah, it's weird enough that horror film was even at that early point, before I figured out that I wanted to be a producer, that I wanted to have anything to do with writing, film was the thing that pushed me to forensics.
That's killer how it affected your life like that and stuff in a very positive way.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, yeah. I feel like you can either, if something negative happens, you can kind of just like let it kick the shit out of you. And sometimes it does. Like, I don't want anybody to feel like if you're very beaten down at a certain moment, that that's just it for you, or that you're somehow weak because you're feeling those things. But just like, I think any advice for anybody, just don't stay in a place where you can keep getting kicked. Just try to create, like, we look at, I think, filmmakers and stuff as if they're like, these like holier than thou like creators sometimes. And like, the thing is that you're constantly creating. You have to reinvent yourself all the time. You have to create a new life for yourself when the old one doesn't work. So like, we're all capable of creation. And I think the best creation is what you're able to accomplish, or anything positive you're able to create from like basically ashes of something. So
Right.
yeah. So if you're constantly doing that, if everybody's always doing that, then there's always going to be stories to tell, right? So,
Yeah. And maybe less remakes. That would be nice, right?
I would love less remakes. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Every
Like,
year.
there's been a remake here and there that I'm like, yeah, that was, pretty good. But it's also just, why? Like, there's,
Yeah, really. I mean, like one of the best remakes I've seen just kind of touches on Spectervision because it involves Elijah Wood, but the remake Maniac was pretty fucking awesome.
okay, I will give you that. Yeah, totally agree. That one I was a fan of. It was a little bit of a different twist that I really actually enjoyed. But is there any other remake that you can think of? Because I did like that
Uh,
one.
Evil Dead was cool. I enjoyed it because it was a whole new take on Evil Dead. It was more
Hmm.
of a reimagining than a remake. I enjoyed
Right.
that one.
I think I think I can wrap my head around remakes a little bit, kind of like you said, reimagining. Like if it's like a little bit of a different twist on something. But yeah, but typically it's just, and especially lately, it feels like everything's a spinoff, everything's a remake. The only spinoff I've liked recently has been Shoresy. I don't know if you watch Letterkenny at all.
No, I never got into that.
Oh my
Never.
God,
I've heard good things about it.
the dialogue is just like, I I've never laughed that hard in a way that it feels like you're still trying to like get through the first joke, and
Mhm.
then he hits you with another one and you're just sitting there like, what? So the dialogue, like the writing, all of that in that show, and then now in Shoresy, is pretty good. But that's kind of the one of the only spin-offs that I've been, okay, this can be unique or whatever. It's, I don't know, it's very disheartening, and I don't want to say anything like super negative, but I'm just like, I'm super over the superhero thing. I'm
Oh yeah, yeah. Same here. So many. I mean, yeah, I did watch all the Marvel movies after a while, but it took me like 10 years to get through all of them, just, all the way up to the new stuff. It's just like, all right, this is something I can throw on without really have to pay attention to. And just, I'm more of a fan like when Blade came out,
oh, for
with
sure.
Wesley Snipes. I mean, that was technically like one of the first Marvel superhero movies, and that was so dark, so well done. Like that's the kind of shit I like. I like the anti-hero. I don't like this bright and shiny shit that comes out now with the Marvel universe. It just don't really do much for me.
And it's just like, I don't know, like the storylines. And here's the thing, because like one of the criticisms I get whenever I bring that up is like, well, you didn't grow up with the comics, and I call bullshit. I did grow up with the comics. Specifically, like I'm very familiar with a lot of like the Spider-Man villains. So
Hmm.
I get very irritated. Like, I think the most irritated I was recently was the way that they did. I can't even remember which one it is now. We went to see it. One of the Venoms where they had Carnage in it.
Hmm.
And to me, like from when I was younger reading like Cletus Cassidy's character, I was like, that was a character that you could have done so much with because he's so scary.
Yeah, he's
So
absolutely insane.
yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, how did the cartoon do a better job at like making him just an absolute freak of the week than, Marvel
Right.
Universe? I was just like, I'm so, yeah, I was bored. Like there was some haha moments here and there, but other than that, I was just kind of like they had like a really good blueprint to do something kind of cool and they just tanked it. In my again, this is my opinion. I understand that people feel differently. That's fine, but I think you're wrong and I think it's embarrassing.
I'll tell you one series that I think people forget about that is tied in with the Marvel universe, but it's kind of their own thing. It doesn't tie in with the stuff that's on Disney now, but it's like the Fox own version of Marvel, I guess. It's called Legion, and that's on Hulu right now. But it's been off for like a couple of years now. It was an FX show, but Legion is fucking good, man. It's totally different than any other Marvel movie you're gonna see. Like it got a lot of horror elements, really dark, really psychological, just strange. Like I really
Yeah.
recommend that. I just don't know how many people have seen it. I never hear any talk about it. So
Another like interesting, and here's the thing, kind of how we just talked about how like media has so much influence over culture. One of the things that I think if I'm able to have a big enough voice in films someday is just very, very, to me, just kind of pathetic lack of indigenous representation.
hmm
And the thing is that there's a quote, and I feel sad because I can't remember who said it, but if you don't think representation matters, it's probably because you're well represented. So Hollywood has a very long history of just doing natives dirty, pretty much, by the way that they
but
like misrepresentation is number one. Number two, like all of like the John Wayne movies, like the Native American women, number one, they're sexualized like to they're sexualized into the ground, and then they're white women, right? They're just
right, yeah.
white women in tan makeup, and it's kind
hmm
of upsetting. Um, but because media has such a prominent and like really strong influence on culture, you can kind of see it affect our politics, which
hmm
is kind of scary because I'm sorry, Trump is basically kingpin. I don't know if anybody's picked up on that,
Oh
but
yeah,
I was
totally.
just like, yeah, I was like, you're just a super villain again in orange makeup for some reason. But like, some of the stuff that he's said lately, I've just been dying laughing at because I can't believe that it's real. That um, tweet that he was talking about them spreading the documents out on the floor, and I was just kind of like, you're literally describing just the way that because I've done forensic photography before, actually for the most part. When I wasn't doing autopsy, I was on scene, and they would have me photograph stuff. So I was just like, you're literally just describing like the way that we take a photo of evidence. This is just how it's done. But I was dying laughing, and I was just reading some of his stuff, and I was just like, I just cannot believe, like, are you a real person? I
It's
can't believe that
crazy.
you're a real person. So it's interesting. It's funny to watch some of those very, what you would think are like outlandish fictional representations of villains pop up in like real life after
hmm
watching them in some of the movies that have been coming out. It's interesting. I don't necessarily know what to say about it, honestly. I'm sure that there's people that like very vehemently disagree with it, but I don't know. I feel like it's had more of an effect than we think it has.
Yeah, it's totally life imitating art, art imitating life, but it's like more, it's more one-sided now. It's like the shit we've seen in movies is really happening in real life now. It's very strange.
Yeah. And I think it's funny to like just be, like I said, Trump is Kingpin, or Wilson Fisk was his name in the comics, but
Mhm.
I was dying laughing because I was just like, I remember like who this man was as a kid. So now as a 30 something year old, I'm definitely not going to vote for Wilson Fisk. Just saying.
That's
uh,
great. We need a
yeah,
Spider-Man. Where's our Spider-Man at?
exactly. Yeah,
Where's
it's not dark. It's
Daredevil?
not, and I'm sorry, it's not Dark Brandon. Dark
No,
Brandon is
no,
not
no,
Spider-Man.
definitely
So,
not. Yeah.
but yeah, like you said, life imitating art, art imitating life. It's very strange. It's very strange to watch.
Yeah, some days I think we are living in some type of giant bubble and
Simulation.
somebody else, yeah, simulation, or
Yeah.
we're in somebody's dream. It's weird shit. Simulation theory is pretty interesting, but it's just a theory, but very interesting stuff. It's kind of like the Matrix, I guess. I could
Yeah,
see
for
that.
sure. Yeah, I think the longer you live, the more you're just like, yeah, okay, none of this. I mean, not to say that none of this matters because it matters to some capacity, but yeah, you definitely start to feel at some point like this is all just a dream a baby's having anyway. So why do I have to care?
Yeah, it's like, why do I have to care about this? It's only going to get stranger. I'm not going to be here for all this shit when I'm gone. So tell them what it's going to be like when we're not here, in the future, if we survive long enough without being hit by an asteroid or blowing ourselves up. Like, who knows what the future holds, like when it comes to craziness.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm
So
thinking,
is
we might crack the earth open or something, and Cthulhu and them come out and take over everything. I mean, that's always a possibility, right?
Brandon, we should be so lucky. Um so if you could, like, just in your mind's eye and your wildest dreams, is there a movie that you're kind of hoping that SpectreVision either facilitates, comes up with on their own? What is a concept or something that you're looking forward, hopefully, to seeing from them in the future?
I would love to see them do a werewolf movie, because we are severely lacking in good werewolf movies, and it's been like this for
I
many, many
agree with
years now.
you. I agree with you entirely.
I think they could do it justice, just by their reputation and stuff of how they do their films, like the artistic way they do them. I think they could really do a killer werewolf film.
Yeah, it would be horrifically, I feel like, fucked up in a like very profound way. Yeah, because what movie was it recently? Did you see The Wolf of Snow Hollow?
I did. It was good up to a point, and I was disappointed. And I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it was it was the very end. It was like, oh
Okay.
man, I was like, fuck. I was like, come on.
I thought so. Same thing. Not giving any spoilers away. I did think that it was because I'm very much like you. I love werewolves, and I think we're very lacking in, I think the last one I saw that I genuinely enjoyed, and it wasn't even, I feel like, in like a serious bent, was Ginger Snaps.
Oh yeah, I love Ginger Snaps.
Yeah, so that's
I love the first two. I think they did a third one. I didn't care for too much, but yeah,
yeah.
great films.
And those are the last ones that I remember watching and just genuinely enjoying. But I don't know, like there's been like so many modern ones and you get really excited to see it, and then there's something about it that's just like something about it that just doesn't, it's like an itch that hasn't been scratched, basically. So I feel like The Wolf of Snow Hollow, it wasn't bad, but I understand your disappointment with it deeply.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are disappointed with that ending, and it's great up to that point. I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's got a little bit of humor in there. It's like kind of a mystery. It's like, oh, cool. And then that's like, oh man, what happened?
Well, honestly, even the concept that I think that people are disappointed with, I still think that that was actually kind of cool. It's just not, I feel like, what people were craving is the problem.
Right.
Because I mean, cannibalism is always fascinating.
Right.
I just like, that is not, I feel like, again, if you're trying to scratch an itch for this particular audience, that was not the location that you needed to scratch. So no. Yeah, so I agree with you. There's a lot missing from that genre of film that I would just also love to see them do. Specifically, and I know this is like lame of me to say, but like I trust Daniel Noah when it comes to anything cryptid, to be totally honest with you.
Oh yeah, so, totally.
Yeah. He's the only person that I want to see involved in a Bigfoot film, Mothman, anything like that. But I feel like if anybody knows a decent amount about the Beast of Bray Road, other than actual people from Wisconsin, I think it would be SpectreVision. So.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And we need a good Beast of Bray Road film too, because they came out with one, I think, in the early 2000s, and it was horrible.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and it's that same thing, like where you're scrolling through a streaming service, you type in werewolf into the search box, and there's all of these really awesome looking, like basically like posters essentially for these films, and like that they're not going to deliver. I remember very vividly when I was in college, I bought, and this should have been my first mistake, right? It was 15 films for $5.
Oh, I remember those, yeah.
Right. But, like, let's just give it a shot. Maybe you'll find a gem that Hollywood shit on and decided they didn't want. No, it was all crap. They were like, people were right. This is not. But they were, you're just constantly looking for that perfect werewolf film that just doesn't exist. I mean, we got super close with American Werewolf in London, and but no.
That's my all-time favorite. I love American Werewolf in London. To me,
Same.
I think that's the perfect werewolf film. Besides, there's a couple other ones there I keep in that same category. That'd be the original Howling and Dog Soldiers. Like all those are like right neck and neck. Oh, and fuck, Silver Bullet too. Throw Silver Bullet in there. Those are like the best of the best to me.
See, for me, I feel like those are all like really, really, really great, but it's for me personally, it's still that same feeling of like there's something missing and I can't even articulate what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we just need to get a couple like really brilliant minds on just the subject of one perfect werewolf movie.
Right.
See where it goes.
I got a really killer idea for one too, like that hasn't been done before, so that would be a great. Yeah, I got a good one. I think it would make for one hell of a movie.
How do you feel about emailing it to me?
Oh yeah, totally. I will do that. Yeah, it's a good one. I just came up with this idea a couple of weeks ago. I don't know where it came from. Like most ideas, you just don't know where they come from. But this
Usually
one hit me like, oh, cool.
Usually the best ideas just kind of punch you in the face for no reason.
I think I wrote a couple like really, really short werewolf stories when I was in my writing mood last year or so. I don't know if I've ever sent those to you or not.
I think you sent me the one about cats, which I liked.
Yeah, I like the cat one. That one really makes you think.
It felt very like just the way that I feel like in my house with my cat, because I love him to death, but he's a monster. He just another example of something that doesn't have any empathy.
Oh yeah, totally. Cats, there's something else.
I was telling my brother the other day, they're like one of the only animals that will punch you.
Yeah, that's true.
I was sitting next to him. We were watching a movie, and I was sitting next to my cat on the couch, and I moved in a way that upset him. So he just struck me. And I was just like, kind of just like in my head, just kind of chuckling to myself about like this tiny little ball of fur that if I really wanted to, and if I also didn't have any empathy, could technically just punt across the living room. Let's be real. Just hit me on my own couch in my own house.
Yeah, Lily does that shit to me all the time. If I'm petting her and stuff, and she's like, "All right, I'm done with you petting me." Like, fucking, here comes a claw or here comes a paw with no claw, and that's the warning. And then the next time the claws come out, she's got huge ass claws.
They're just evil. It's just funny. I was like, there's this thing that if it was big enough to kill me, it would. But I just keep it in here and pet it and give it treats and speak real condescendingly to it.
Yeah, because they're really not. I mean, they're kind of tame, but at the end of the day, they're kind of wild animals, especially compared to a dog. Those are two different things there.
If you upset a cat so my cat doesn't get along with other cats, right? If you put him anywhere near another cat, he is just immediately feral again.
Oh yeah, that's like the same with ours. Like, yep.
Yeah, puffed up, doesn't recognize me anymore. If I reach my hand in there, like God forbid, if I ever like reach my hand in there to be like, please calm down, he'll just tear me to shreds. So it's always so funny to me. I was like, I just keep this like little ball of no empathy, anger, and low key hatred just in my house.
Yeah, that's our house here. That's the same thing with these two. Like, man, a lot of hatred with them, but then they also show a lot of love too. But it's like 50-50, the hate and the love.
Exactly. Like when I broke up a cat fight with my sweet little man who like lit my ass up, like I put him back in the room. And so it's just like a 3-second difference between out there just like absolutely lost his mind, just nothing but like a whirlwind of fur and claws and teeth and just guttural growls from hell. Put him back in the room. I came back in to check on him and he's like rubbing on my legs, purring. I'm just like, I don't understand what just happened. I'm bleeding.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much for them to fucking cut you open too. Their claws are sharp as hell.
Just absolute monsters.
Oh yeah, that's why I love them so much. We live with monsters, you know. It's great.
That is a cute, just in general way to describe it. Yeah, this is my house monster.
Yeah, it's like what I always wanted since I was a kid. I wanted my own monster, and I have one. So
please don't look him in the eye if you're not ready to challenge him. That would be great.
Well, before we go, do you have any like killer recommendations of stuff you've been watching lately that you like to talk about?
Oh, see, this is why we need a docket, Brandon. I should have written one or something. I have. Shit. So I will always recommend the book The Psychopath Inside by Dr. James Fallon. Again, that's the one that I was inspired by SpectreVision, ended up, because I read the book before that, but then for some reason that film and that book just kind of like made a like very hardcore connection for me. So that just kind of inspired like the vast majority of my writing. Mm-hmm. So always recommend that. Of course, Devil in the White City and In the Garden of Beasts by Eric Larson. Really good books. Let's see. And then movie wise, I saw this and this is another example of this movie was so beautiful, but again, just another werewolf movie that just doesn't scratch the itch. But I still think you should watch it if you haven't, because it was just gorgeous. Let's see. I think you can find it in. Mm. This is so cool. It's actually not coming up for me. So how about I send you a list and then we'll just put those in your show notes?
Yeah, I'm down with that too.
Because I don't want to like be like scrolling through my phone while your audience is like, wow, this is exhausting.
Well, I got a few if you haven't checked them out yet. Some recent watches that are cool. I just watched this one today because it was recommended from my friends over at the Necromaniacs podcast. This movie is called Men. Have you seen Men?
I have not.
Oh yeah, you're in for some fucking crazy weird shit. It reminds me a lot of the series Channel Zero that came out on Sci-Fi. Then they put it on Shudder. Have you ever seen any of those episodes before?
I'm going to say no. I don't think I have.
Okay, well, the director of Men is Alex Garland. He did Ex Machina, Annihilation.
Oh, okay.
So if you dig those type things, this is it doesn't feel like either one of those films, but in a good way. It is it's super strange and very unsettling. Highly recommend Men. I don't want to give away any kind of spoilers, so like even say anything about what's going to happen in this film can fuck everything up for you, because I just say watch it. You're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. I ended up loving it. I thought it was like a 9 out of 10. So
I love going in blind, so that's perfect.
Yeah, you want to with this one. You don't want to know. Don't read any kind of synopsis about it or any of that shit. Definitely going blind. And another one that's streaming on Shudder right now is Rebecca McKendry's film Glorious. It's kind of is a cosmic horror comedy that takes place in pretty much in a bathroom roadside, and deals with a glory hole with a Cthulhu type creature on the other side. So that's all you need to know. Yeah.
That's kind of awesome.
And it's really well done. Like, it sounds crazy as hell, explaining it and stuff, but it's really good. It looks good. Like, it really has that Lovecraftian feel to it. It's definitely one to watch, and that's streaming up on Shudder. And there's one more that I thought was really cool, but this one has a couple of brutal scenes in there involving cats that almost turned the shit off. I'm like, man, fuck. I mean, they're really fucking brutal. It's called The Innocents. Have you seen that?
I have, yeah, and I feel the
Okay.
same way that you feel,
God
because
damn it, yeah.
yeah, cats can do whatever they want to us, but it's very hard to watch anything happen to them, ironically.
Yeah, that was just as bad as Gummo, pretty much. Those couple scenes. I was like, no, please don't do what I'm thinking about. I'm like, fuck, man, like shit. But I continued on with it. It was great. You know, it was really interesting. Pretty dark, really dark, and it kind of touches on that superhero type thing. You know, with these kids with the powers and stuff. So, but whew, rough with the cat
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So
You know
heads up
what?
warning anybody.
I just remembered, and it again, because it's in Norwegian, it may be different, but Valley of Shadows is the name of that. And again, it purports to be a movie about like werewolves in some capacity.
Hmm.
It's a gorgeous film. I really liked it. I think it makes it easier to stomach movies when you go in just like not like trying as hard as you can not to expect anything. So I still really liked it, but yeah, it's the same
Okay,
thing
I've never
along
seen
that.
that one.
Yeah, it was.
Is that
It's just,
streaming on anywhere? I'm
let
sorry to
me.
interrupt you.
No, you're totally fine. Let's see. It was on. It was on Amazon last time I saw it. I think that they've since moved it. It looks like
Okay.
it's now on.
Oh, it's
Oh
on Tubi actually.
yeah. Oh
It's
sweet.
free on Tubi. Yeah. So
Tubi's been kind of awesome lately.
it is like it's one of the
Yeah,
best places for horror. Like it kills Netflix when it comes to horror, and like
it really does. I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just have to deal with some commercials, but that's really no big shit. I mean, we grew up with commercials and antennas and all the other stuff, so you know it's nothing to us. You know?
Exactly.
So I was like, okay, I could deal with a few of these for watching some killer. They just have a killer lineup, and they got a lot of full moon films on there too, which I enjoy.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, subspecies. I think they have every one of those on Tubi, if I'm not mistaken, or they did at one time. So, well, awesome. This has been fucking great talking with you. I love
Yeah,
talking
you
serial
too.
killer, SpectreVision, and this horror in general. So,
I know.
I
It
think,
was a pretty neat conversation. I enjoyed it myself. It's
oh
always,
yeah,
I
we
mean, it's
covered
always good
a lot.
talking to you though. So
Yeah, and we can we'll do this more often too. Like we'll do like some special episodes here and there. I'm totally down with that.
for sure, yeah. I might be doing. So I've been trying to start another podcast. We'll see. I'm not a
Hmm.
fan of just. It's weird because like I listen to podcasts where there's just one person hosting that I'm totally fine with, but I
Hmm.
prefer the co-host dynamic, especially for myself, because I feel like I just ramble sometimes like a psychopath, and I don't. I don't enjoy that side of myself, so I need somebody to rein me in. But yeah, I'll update you whenever that happens.
Oh yeah, yeah. Definitely update me on that. I'll support you and share away and stuff and listen. So that'd be killer.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I love listening to your stuff, and I'll always share it whenever I have Wi-Fi available. I think I missed one. I missed sharing one of yours last week that I felt bad about, but that was, I think, the only one I've missed. So
Yeah, you're always like sharing my stuff and support, and I really appreciate that.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you're the first person I met in this community, so it's, I mean, I have a deep sense of loyalty to you on top of just enjoying who you are as a human being. So
Well, I appreciate that.
yeah,
It means a lot. So yeah, same here. So got you back.
for sure.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, you have a killer rest of your weekend. Hopefully, it's a 3-day weekend for you, being that Labor Day is around this Monday.
It
So hopefully,
is. Thank
have a long
God.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you take care, and I will send you that werewolf idea to your
Oh,
email
absolutely. I'd love to hear
messenger and
it,
stuff.
especially from you.
I think you might dig it. So, all righty. Well, take care and have a good weekend.
You too, Brandon.
Later.
Later.